Joining us on Premiere is a young lady that you've seen her on the BBC. Millions have heard her story. Her story's been read in the newspapers in Ireland and around the world. I certainly bumped into her story on the BBC. But also joining her is her mum, Rachel, and mummy, Yemisi, who I have to call Auntie Yemisi this morning. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
Thank
for
you for
having
having
us.
us.
And before I delve into the conversation and come to you, Rachel, because really we're speaking because of you, mother. How are you feeling? How's your husband feeling? How's Rachel's siblings? How are they feeling since she came home on Thursday?
We have been so joyful. We are so happy to have her back home. That's just feeling. So happy to have her back home.
Now I noticed on the photos and the newspapers in Ireland reporting the moment that Rachel got back, looking very tearful and saying that what she looked forward to the most is to go home and sleep. Now, for you and your husband especially, were you keen for her to stay up so you can talk to her, or you just said, "Okay, child, just sleep," or you what?
Actually, we got home after 1. After getting home after 1, I went to her home.
That's
She
1 a.m. in the morning. 1 a.m. in the
1
morning.
a.m. in the morning, yeah, Friday morning.
Okay.
So because our flight was so late in the night, so when we got home after 1, I went to her room to check on her, have a chat and chat with her. That how is she okay? Ask few questions from her, but I can tell that she's kind of so tired. She just need to sleep because she has been on the road since morning. I mean, for 4 days, so she needs to sleep. And I understand. Just okay. Now we have you back home. I will just let you go to bed. That's what happened that night.
So, Rachel, let's come to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. And like I said, when I watched your interview on the BBC, now looking at you, you look like a 15-year-old, not a university
Not a
student.
lot. Yeah.
Um, but let me ask you about your experience. For those who are not familiar with your story, you're a student in Ukraine,
Yeah.
and you were caught in the middle of this terrible tragedy, like the millions have been. You reported how you would run to the bunker with your fellow students as the shelling went on. Tell us from your perspective, uh, how things how things how things happened from the beginning to the point where you got to leave the country.
Okay, so as everyone knows, the invasion started on Thursday, the 24th of February. And for us, it was going to be just a regular day of medical school. We woke up around that same 5 a.m. where all the news headlines were coming in. We woke up at that time to study anyway. So I was with two of my other friends. And when we woke up, as we were about to start, just notifications just kept coming in, flooding in that Kyiv and other cities were being bombed and that the Russians were invading. So from that point, we kind of knew we need to get out as soon as possible. Government had been advising people to leave previously. However, if you were on the ground in Ukraine, you would know that most people were certain that this invasion was not going to happen and that it was business as usual. I already consulted my school about the fact that my government told me to come home, and they advised that it was probably exaggerated, that this war had been going on for 8 years prior to the invasion. So they were sure that nothing would happen as they'd seen for the past few years. So the invasion was a complete shock to all of us. And we kind of all just, as soon as it happened, we had to figure out where we would go from there. So,
Okay. So let me come to you, Mother. We're watching the news cycles around the world. Governments are saying people should come back or travel back, etc. Governments would advising its citizens to travel. And I'm assuming you and your husband made inquiries too as to the seriousness of this and talked with Rachel. What were the questions you were asking? What were the answers you were getting from official comms?
To be honest with you, we heard about it in the news, but I didn't get in touch with any of the government parastatals or any of the ministers. Well, I just called on to Rachel and said, "Oh, Rachel, this is what we are hearing, that there's going to be war in Ukraine. What is the story? You have to come back home now." And she said, "Oh, yeah, she even received a call from the Minister of Foreign Affairs that she needs to come back home, that she has a limited chance if she stayed there, not coming home." But Rachel went quickly to the school authority to let them know about what our government is saying here, that she needs to come back home. But they gave her assurance that, oh, that is how they've been talking about it, that it might not happen, that she still needs to stay because it won't happen. They have been talking about it, and it's never come to pass,
Right.
So, but I was worried. My daughter was worried as well. But Rachel keep telling you calm down. They said it's not going to happen. There's not going to be war, and we are just taking our own words into us. Maybe nothing will happen. She's fine. That's what happened,
So Rachel, so you're getting assurances from the authorities in Kiev that, listen, calm down, it's exaggerated. So the invasion would have been as much of a shock to them as it was to you. So tell me some of what was happening, what you were hearing from students and from people that you've seen around that we don't get to hear on the news. What were some of the things going on? Because I mean, we don't get the sense sometimes on the news that people were shocked. We just get the sense that people were resilient and people weren't going to give up. So what were some of the things that you were experiencing, your friends were experiencing, your Ukrainian friends? I'm sure there was some Russian friends too that you had. What were some of the things that you were experiencing that we don't hear on the news?
I was speaking to older students who had been in my city, SUNY, for longer than I had. And they were so very sure that this was going to be more of an economic war than a physical war, seeing as we've just come back from COVID and all countries are still reeling from it and still trying to build back their economies from it. So they were so certain that Russia wouldn't do this due to the fact this would be a war that would be coming out of taxpayers' money. And in such a very difficult economic time anyway, it would make absolutely no sense to wage war for basically no reason. So we were hearing, each time I would hear like a big headline, I would text my group head being like, my government are still telling me to come home. We're getting worried. My parents are considering buying tickets, but I don't want to be marked as absent in class, because in Ukraine, the way they do it, if you're absent in class, you have to rework that class, meaning you have to make up the hours and you also have to pay. So I didn't want to have to do that because medical school is difficult enough as it is. Missing one class would take a lot of time to make up. So missing, like, let's say a whole week would be very, very difficult to rework. And there was also the fear that, okay, now let's say I do go home and nothing happens. I will have had to make up for all that time and it would have kind of been a waste of time. So each time a headline would come in, I would go to my group head and she would say the exact same thing, that business as usual, things are going on and they're just hoping that it's just another hoax that the Russians have pulled, because they have said many times that they're going to invade or they're going to do something and they haven't followed through. So we were just kind of hoping.
So when it does become real, bombs are falling, you're hearing them, you're running to the shelter. You said on your interviews in the Beeb that you were keen to keep your family at home calm, and so you didn't. This is what I understood. You didn't let them know how worried you were. Describe to us what was going on in your mind and in your heart, given that you were now in the middle of stuff that you'd only seen on TV, which I'm sure you'd seen. You watched Syria, you watched parts of Africa, and here you are in the middle of it in Ukraine. What was going on in Rachel's heart? What was going on in your mind that you dearly didn't want your parents to know or hear?
Obviously, I was afraid. It's not something that you ever expect to go through, especially in the 21st century. No one expected any sort of type of war to come about. It doesn't make sense. We have so much diplomacy that war shouldn't actually be a thing that exists this far along into society. But I was afraid sometimes, but I had to stay calm because me being stressed was benefiting nobody. It definitely wasn't benefiting me anyway. So staying calm was kind of one of the only things that was in my control, because you're helpless in that situation. All you can do is regulate your emotions and try to focus on positives and try to focus on the important things like getting essential items, food, water, staying in contact with family, letting them know that I am in a dangerous area, but I am safe where I am. And
Were there any Bible verses or songs that, because I know I discovered that you're a singer, you're a worship leader yourself. Um, uh, whenever you get the chance, were there Bible verses or songs that you now employed as your tools to stay calm and stay positive?
Psalm 91, of course, it's the go-to one, of course. Psalm 91. I was reading that as much as I could, and I love the Bible verse, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper." And there's also a song by Fred Hammond that is called "No Weapon" as well. So I loved listening to that, because I feel the reason I stayed so calm was because I was given peace by God. In situations, a lot of people would not act as calmly as I did, or would have a lot of fear. But for the most part, I felt I felt very at peace, and I felt like the grace of God was over me, and that people were praying for me. I was praying for myself, that God promised that his protection is over me and he wouldn't fail me in my darkest hour. So I was just trying to stay as calm and stay as prayerful as possible, and just stay in faith that God would see me through and help me out.
And mother, for you and your husband, um, what were there particular psalms and songs that kept you focused on your daughter's safety and coming home? Because whilst you're going through all this, we're talking about death tolls. People were being maimed, people were dying, and I'm sure that would have been a worry for you.
Yeah, just like she said, Psalm 91 has always been my watch psalm that I keep reading day and night. And sometimes I read Psalm 23 as well. And I'll just turn into any nice worship songs, be singing in my head because I don't want to go crazy. So most of the time I will just sing in my head. I don't even know where it's coming from. Any verses I can't even mention how many psalms or how many songs I've been singing when all this is going on until she comes back. You know, if I just head on to the word of God that says, "Oh, no weapon formed against me shall prosper, and no evil before me, even when thousand are falling at my right hand side, 10,000 are falling at my left hand side, will not come near me." Those are the words that I was heading on to. And I believe people have been praying with us, because our church members, everybody that knows about the situation, they are praying along with us. And I believe so much in prayers, and it's actually worked for us. So,
Rachel, are there people that you know whose story haven't quite turned out the way yours has, and how are their families dealing with it?
I'm fortunate enough that the day after I was evacuated, the city I was in, Sumi, our school arranged for all the students, all the international students, to be evacuated also. So around 30 buses came to evacuate them all, and they've all managed to get safely out of Ukraine. A lot of people are still seeking refuge in countries like Hungary, but a lot did actually manage to go home. So I am lucky enough to say that all the people that I know and all my friends did make it out safely.
So we were having a discussion on Twitter, and we were having a discussion on Twitter Spaces around how some people were being treated, and of course you understand, in a situation of war, chaos ensues, but reports of certain groups of people not getting the same treatment as others, and specifically Black and brown people. And there were comments, very strong comments from some members of the community who said, well, I mean, Black and brown people shouldn't be walking and rushing to borders of Poland and the likes. They should have gone to their embassies, and it's their fault, and it's the fault of the embassies that they're going through what they're going through. What's your response to those sort of thoughts?
My response would be, it's very easy to speculate what to do in a situation, but you can never truly understand what it's like unless you are there on the ground and unless you experience it yourself. So a lot of people fleeing to borders was out of sheer fear. When you hear the things that we've heard, bombs going off, ammunition, shelling, you are petrified, and all that you're thinking about is your safety. And if you have the opportunity to get to a border, a lot of people will go. In my situation, it wasn't possible to go because all transport was cut. But for people who had the opportunity to go, I completely understand why they did. Because if you hear that there is safety somewhere, of course you're going to run to it. But hearing that when they get there and seeing that they're not being treated the same, it's not their fault. You can't blame the victims for discrimination that they experience. They can't help the fact that they are born with a certain skin complexion, and it's just completely unfair to say that they shouldn't have been on foot, because there was it was very limited what embassies could do on the ground, because a lot of embassies actually evacuated their staff that were in the cities before the invasion began. So there was very limited help as to what the embassies were doing. A lot of embassies were telling their people to stay put and to stay where they were. And for a lot of people, their safety was paramount. So to say that they shouldn't have been trying to get to safety is not exactly fair. And it's not right to say that they're silly or they asked for this by going to borders.
So you've been through an experience that none of us want to go through. How much has it changed how you view the things that you see on TV now, as as headlines come up about stuff in the Middle East, or stuff in parts of Africa, and or in South America, and as you said, it's from the safety of our homes. It's just another event. But for you, having been through it now, how much has what you've been through changed what you've seen on TV before and what you're looking at now?
I would say that it's changed in the way that now that I've actually experienced it, I know what it's like on the ground, and that the media can get a lot of the information right, but there's a lot of stuff that they don't get either. And they focus a lot on maybe negatives instead of positives, and they don't always get firsthand information from people who are there. They kind of speculate, and then this leads to leads to kind of panic, hysteria in some areas, and it doesn't always give the full story. So I always kind of take news headlines now with a pinch of salt.
Headlines from Ukraine were telling their story. Headlines from Russia were telling their stories. In between, headlines from everywhere else telling their story. But you're saying sometimes it doesn't catch the truth. How can people who are watching from the sidelines, now that you've been in it, how would you encourage people to get to the truth? Because everyone is, and we have this saying in our world now, my truth. So Russia has their truth, Ukraine has their truth, and middle people are dying. How does someone in the UK or someone in the USA, how do they actually get to the truth now that you've been through this?
I think the main thing is to not just believe the very first thing that you read, because there's so many conflicting stories and so many different points of view. Like you said, Russia has their side, Ukraine has their side, all the big countries, NATO has their side. It's important to, if you want proper information, you have to read into it. You don't just take the first thing that you're given and run with it. You look for stories, you look for firsthand experiences, because they're primary sources. They can't make it up. They're the ones that are living it. So look for firsthand experiences, and just look for the truth as much as possible, reliable sources, and not just believing any articles, because a lot of people, anyone could write an article, whether or not what they're saying is true or not, it depends. So it's important to just make sure you do proper research, not just taking the first thing you have and sticking with it.
So as we wrap up, what does the future, from your perspective, what does it look like for you now, academically, and also in terms of the trauma that you've gone through? Where are you now? What are you planning to do, or what's mother and dad say you must do? What's the future like for Rachel?
I'm hoping to study and continue my studies as I'm studying medicine, and I really do want to be a doctor. My country has said that they're going to allow Irish students who were in Ukraine to continue their studies in Ireland. So that's a huge relief to know that the last 3 months haven't gone to waste, and that I will continue to further my studies and hopefully get my degree in 6 years' time, please God. But I'm definitely going to have to go through a lot of healing, because I know myself, I haven't fully processed the past almost 3 weeks of what has happened. What that healing will look like, I'm not 100% sure myself, but I'm definitely going to make sure that I pray about it. I continue to have faith that God will see me through, and that any help that I need, I will seek it out and make sure that I'm okay mentally and physically after this war and this experience that I've gone through.
And mother, what does the future look like from your perspective, for you and your husband?
Oh well, what can I say? We hope for the best, and I we know with the help of God, everything will work perfectly for us.
And for those who are praying, I'm coming to you first as a parent. What would you say their prayer should be at this point?
Is it for the family or for Rachel?
For you, for the situation in Ukraine, how would you say they should be praying?
I'd say that they should continue praying for Ukraine.
Ukraine, of course,
because I'm lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones that actually got out. There are still millions of people who are stuck there that need everyone's prayer, support, donations, anything they can do, because I've seen what it's like and how scary it can be and what a bunker is like. So praying for people who are stuck there, like anyone that's praying for me, I appreciate it, but it should definitely be directed towards the Ukrainians and Ukraine as a nation, because it was a beautiful place that I lived in, and they're a wonderful people that didn't deserve this in the slightest. And I just pray that their country can rebuild and come back bigger and better, because they deserve it, and they deserve to develop and continue to just live as normal people do.
And Rachel, songs that you are now singing now that you're home, No Weapon Saw You Through, the tragedies of Ukraine, but now you're home. What was a song that woke you up this morning as you woke up?
Victory Belongs to You by Todd Delaney. Really good song.
Wow. Well, ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Mother, thank you for allowing us to do this, and look forward to seeing you when we come to Ireland, and look forward to seeing you leading worship, Rachel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.